like a kid. I think it's important to never lose that. And like when I first got the opportunity with Will, when Will Smith's team like had reached out, I remember sitting down and thinking like, okay, this is a new relationship. This is a new client. I can take whatever energy I want into this relationship. So like I sat down and I was like, I should decide what kind of energy I want to take into this relationship, because this is like a life-changing opportunity for me. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to go into this relationship with just like so much optimism and like hope and inspiration. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I'm going to be like the kid in the candy store, because I think people like to be around people like that. They like to have that energy around. They like to have that curious energy. That's what brings life to projects. And that's what makes like working on a set or traveling with somebody exciting. It's like those people who don't treat it like it's just some job, but they're like, this is fucking awesome that we get to do this, you know? What's up, G?
What's up, player? I was hoping you had some sort of beverage. Man. I got one.
What do you got?
I got a little beer.
What is that?
It's it's my buddy Mike. It's my buddy Mikey Ellis's brand, St. Archer. I saw it. It's like I don't know, it's just some shitty light beer, but it's a cold one.
Dude, you can't be talking shit about your friend's beer on your podcast.
That's true. He sold the company anyway, so it's not like it's
shitty. Oh, okay. So it went downhill after the acquisition.
Exactly. No, it's actually pretty good.
I like it.
It does the trick. Thank you.
Yeah. Looks cool, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I just kind of turned the this isn't the direction my desk usually faces, and so this is the podcast backdrop here. You feel me? I had to get some plaque action.
Yeah. So how many of these have you done?
You're talking about these plaques? Or no, these pods. The pods. Oh, this is episode 4.
Oh wow, dude. I'm fucking. So in 5 years, when you're at Joe Rogan's level and they go digging in the crates, bro, they're gonna find a fucking episode 4 with me.
They're gonna find a fucking banger, a gem. Yeah,
no, dude, man, it's cool. I go back and watch the old like Rogan podcast, and they're so lo-fi. They're like this, man. They're like people, like he was shooting them in his crib, and it's insane how far that guy's come with his podcast. But I just see you starting, and I always think like, you know, one day this will be your starting spot if you keep up with it.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Our conversation a few weeks back was really cool. And you told me, you're like, yeah, I went back and listened to Joe Rogan's first podcast, and it was like really inspiring to see where he started.
It's so janky. Like his sponsor used to be Fleshlight, which is that it's legitimately like it's like a thing you fuck.
You know what's funny is,
can you imagine?
That's crazy, because you know what's actually funny is I think I didn't know that, but I think that the history behind that is that dude Aubrey Marcus, who runs that nootropic company called On It, like supplement company called On It.
So he's like a co-founder with Rogan.
Right. And he used to, like, his parents owned Fleshlight.
Yes.
So you know the story too, yeah.
Dude, talk about. Well, I just heard about this, but talk about reinventing yourself, man. Like, you basically make a fuck toy, and you go from that to like building this supplement company that's like insanely successful. Obviously, in large part due to Rogan's platform, but yeah, man, just goes to show, like, you can be in one industry and totally pivot and be like, all right, like, I'm done making things that dudes jizz into. Let's start making some vitamins.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. You know, Aubrey's podcast is like one of my favorite podcasts. Like is it? He's really good himself. So, and he's been I don't know how many hundreds of episodes in he is. But yeah, when you see people like Rogan, when you're starting something like this, it's like, that's like the fucking mountaintop. And you see that Rogan's done like 1,200 episodes and then like another more, 250, like, yeah, he's done like so many episodes. And so,
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like, I don't think people should be comparing themselves to him. I hear he's sort of become like the default when guys in particular, especially like entrepreneurial spirited guys like you, whenever someone's like someone like you is like, I'm starting a podcast, people are like, oh yeah, Rogan, right? And it's just like, you know, it's like, you kind of have to do your own thing. You got to find your own energy. You got to find your own vibe. But, and you can't be discouraged because obviously it's going to take time. Like, you have to fall in love with just the process, because that's all it is process. Like, you're just sitting down and talking to people. It's going to take years to build up your audience.
Right. And I've even thought about it too, where I've deconstructed it even more than that. I've heard, because even like Tim Ferriss was like just a huge inspiration of mine over the years and stuff. Like, I've even heard him kind of talk about how he started his, and he was like, I think he only committed, like in his own mind, he said he was like only committing to like 12 episodes or something like that for himself. And it was just like this this like test, you know? Yeah. And then he was like kind of running this test, and if it was like valuable to him or whatever, then he was gonna, you know, keep going with it.
Yeah. You know, I think you posted on the Student of the Game Instagram, like you had a guest who talked about digging deeper into like what motivates us.
Right. Yeah. Episode 2, Josh Hash. Shout out Josh.
So I can't remember who told me this one time, but they said, if you ask yourself 7 times why you're doing something, like the why beneath the why, you'll always get to the root of like what's truly motivating you to do anything in life. And I think it's super important, like, especially in the social media age, like we have to ask ourselves constantly, like, what's the motivator behind the projects that you're starting? Like, is it that you want to be famous? Is it that you actually want to like learn something? Is it that you want to offer something back to the community? I think it's just important to understand what's motivating you, because if you don't know that, I think it's really easy to get lost along the way.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about you and your journey. I think your story is so cool. I know it so well because I've had a front row seat to some of your like epic achievements, and we've done some really cool shit together. And but yeah, I mean, you know, you're a filmmaker, and at this point you're working with like massive celebrities, people that I'm sure they're just complete household names. I mean, it's like, have you ever heard of The Rock or Will Smith or, you know, a lot of people like this? What, like, obviously, like you said, it's like, I think it's even been 10 years since we met. So like, yeah, it has. And you were doing filmmaking even prior to me meeting you. So I like, what have you learned in the last 10 years? I mean, obviously it's like, I'd just love to hear you kind of deconstruct some of like to get to where you're at. Cause I think you've probably gone a bunch of different directions. Like at the beginning, you might've told yourself like, yo, it'd be really cool to like work with the biggest celebrities in the world. Like that's what like the kid says, right? Like the complete newbie would say something like that. But you know, your career has actually taken you that direction. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you use the word filmmaker because, man, it's like, I feel weird calling myself a filmmaker because I don't necessarily make films. Like, I feel like I'm part of the new generation of creators where I think of myself more as like a digital creator. Because a filmmaker, I was just watching a documentary last night about Stanley Kubrick, who's one of my favorites. Or I don't know if you say it's Kubrick. I think it's Kubrick. But he was a filmmaker. Like he made movies, you know, and that's what I think of filmmaker. I think of a movie maker. I think of like Christopher Nolan. I think of Stanley Kubrick. I think of David Fincher, like my favorites. But when I think about what I do, I think of myself as like a digital content creator. And I think that I've spent the last 10 years sort of honing in on a vision for my life, which
which I think, you know, for me, what originally inspired me was like, I think I just really wanted to travel. I wanted to just be able to see the world with my camera. That was the biggest motivator in the beginning. Like, I just thought, if I can get paid by people to travel around the world and make content, then like what better existence is there, you know? I mean, that to me was the ultimate. And I remember when I met you, you know, you were in the music game, and we talked, and we were talking about how we could work together and make content together. And we did, like, originally, you and I went on tour with like rap groups, and we were like traveling the US in stanky ass vans with a bunch of sweaty rappers.
Yeah, bro.
And those days were great, man. They were scrappy, and like, you know, I learned a bit about the hustle then. But I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's basically what motivated me in the beginning, was just wanting to get paid enough money to sustain myself and to be able to see the world, which, you know, I'm 33 now, and like, I've traveled a lot of the world in the past. The first like part of my career, I was mostly in the States, but then in the last like 5 or so years, I've been able to travel the world making videos. So, and taking photos as well. So, you know, I'm kind of at a point right now where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next.
Right. Yeah, no, it was just super vague, but I kind of wanted to even open it up to, like, you sent me a picture the other day. It's like an epic picture from your Facebook.
Dude, you gotta edit that into this. But yeah, I posted in like April 2012 that I was like, man, Nolan and I are about to go on tour with these rappers. And that was the beginning. You know what it was, is we were going on tour with Pharrell and NERD and Pac Div, which in 2008, I went to an NERD concert in Colorado when I was in college. And I got pulled on stage with a bunch of my friends, and I have photos. I'll send you the photos. This was like pre-smartphones. Like one of my friends had like a digital camera and snapped some photos. They're terrible quality. But I remember that night thinking like, wow, I remember being on that stage with NERD, which had at the time was like my favorite group. Like, you know, like so many of us of our generation idolizing Pharrell, because he was just such an auteur. Like, he did everything, you know. He was like an artist. He was like a philosopher. He still is a rapper, like a fashion icon. And so when I got to go on stage that night, it just like ignited this bug in me where I was like, man, I want to collaborate with people like this. Like, I want to work with people like Pharrell. I want to create stuff with these people. Like, there's got to be a way to make it happen. And I remember that night I met people from his team, and they were like just young, cool people. And I was like, dude, like, these people somehow designed a life where they can, you know, travel with Pharrell and do cool shit for a living.
Right. Do you remember that night that we met Pharrell? Do you remember that story?
Dude, 100%. I remember. He was you and I were on tour with Pac Div, and it was outside the venue. He was like practicing his vocal range.
Right.
Like, he was like in an alley outside the venue. And this just goes to show how dedicated Pharrell is. Like, he wasn't like partying before the show. He was outside the venue by himself, warming up his voice.
Right.
Which I thought was so cool. And you and I walked up to him, and I was like, dude, like, I'm such a huge fan. And he didn't even stop. He was like, la, 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 la. He was like doing his vocal thing. And he went like this. He's like, la, 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 la. Like, so Buddha Zen mode. Yeah. That's how I always think of him, is he's like a Buddha. He's so zened out, you know?
Right. Yeah. No, that's such a cool moment. I'll never forget that.
That was a cool moment.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you the way you introed us was pretty cool too. You were like, yo, we're shooting content for Pac Div. We're going to be on this whole tour with you guys. So we'll be seeing you. And I remember I thought he stopped when he was done, like working on going through his scales, and was like, yo, thanks for saying what's up, guys. For sure. We'll see. Like, I'll definitely be seeing you. I think that there was, but when we were talking to him, I remember that he kept just going through his vocal scales, but he was definitely looking at us for sure.
Yeah. And you know, it's so funny. I was so naive to just interrupt, you know, like I wouldn't do that now. But
you know what's funny is I actually remember thinking that kind of like, damn, like, cause we were just like, fuck. You were just like, fuck it. Let's just go do it. And you just beeline. And I was like, damn, he looks like he's definitely doing something over there.
He was
like
busy. He was for sure busy. And had he been like an egotistical person or just the kind of guy who, not even egotistical, but had he been the kind of guy who had like, couldn't control his anger or something, he could have easily been like, yo, fucking leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
But he was,
or giving us some sort of short answer or like impatient thing. But that was the one thing, he was really present. I noticed I remember.
So present, man. So present and so patient. And yeah, I was so naive. Like I just walked up to him and I was like, yo, I know I just interrupted his thing. But anyways, yeah, so that was those were good days, man. Those were fun days. Actually, I was going through some of that footage the other day. So
getting to see him perform night after night for me, just as like, I mean, I was an aspiring music manager at the time, but like getting to see someone at his caliber perform in really intimate spaces like that, and his stage presence was really, really impressive to me. Like I'll never forget. I remember like being in the pit with our cameras and we were shooting stuff, but I remember that there was always these moments where in the crowd, he had such good presence. He would make eye contact with almost every single person in the crowd, and you could see him intentionally doing that. And I think that it's interesting because in music, it's like being on stage, you know, those guys get stage fright and nerves as well. You know what I mean? But he really had this way of like really focusing on eye contact and stuff. And it's like, it's one of those things where there's a lot of times where artists will like kind of look above the crowd, or they're like, kind of like into this more like feeling themselves vibe where they're like just trying to soak it in. And he was like really giving it back. And I just remember going, damn, that's powerful. Like if I could ever impart that piece of advice to an artist, like try to make everyone in the room feel special, you know what I mean? Because it's like he's making eye contact with all these people and they're exploding, you know what I mean? Because that's really what they came to see, you know. That's
absolutely
what they didn't know they came to see that, but that's what they came to see. Let's stay on that topic a little bit because I think that's super interesting. So like has there been any moments like you've, you know, as a digital content, I'm calling you a filmmaker, you know, you're like going, no, dude. But here's the thing, like you've shown, I mean, I know your work and I know how much passion and just how much you put into it. And I think that like you tell like amazing, beautiful stories, and you really like know how to do that, whether it's day-to-day lifestyle content or whether it's, you know, something more in depth where it's like has to do around someone's life or their story or whatever. But has there been any moments in your career where you've like been around a celebrity or been around somebody and like just totally dropped the ball and said or did something stupid that kind of ousted you from the group, or like something that you were like, fuck, like similar to that scenario?
You mean like just running just up like in for
wrong time, wrong place, say the wrong thing?
Let me think on that for like 1 second. I'm trying to think.
While you think about that, while you think about that, I just think that, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, at this point, you're a master at being around an A-list celebrity. So like you've figured out all the do's and don'ts. Tell us a little bit about like what it takes to kind of like move in these people's inner circles and, you know.
Sure. I think it's just being, obviously you have to respect the ecosystem that they've created. You know, there's like a hierarchy of you know, the people that look after them, the people that help them move around. There's like publicists, managers, producers, agents. And so when you make content for someone like Will Smith or The Rock, obviously you have to follow the protocol of, respecting everybody's role. And I think for me, the energy that I try to bring is just one of like total optimism 24/7. It's like, I think it's just really important to, when you're working with teams, especially like the teams that I've been fortunate enough to work with, is just try to be positive and always be a problem solver, always be willing to offer up like, hey, what needs to get done? I'm here, I'm ready to do it. And that's just the spirit that I try to bring. And other than that, yeah, it's just like following the rules and making sure that you respect everybody. And then, obviously it's like never publishing content that, you didn't get approval for, those kinds of things, making sure you fully understand like what that kind of relationship is,
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, totally. Yeah, that's what I was looking. I think it's really like, it's such an interesting, there's just an interesting flow to it. You know what I mean? I've learned the hard way a lot of times about moving around certain people and the different type of energy that you can bring. Like, I'm just so inquisitive, you know what I mean? I'd just be over here asking a million questions, you know what I mean? I'd just be over here like, so what? I'd be interviewing him. It's like, dude, The Rock shouldn't let me on his airplane because I will ask him a lot of fucking questions. You know what I mean?
I'm that way too, man. And I think that that's part of who I pride myself on, being curious. I pride myself on being like a kid. I think it's important to never lose that. And like when I first got the opportunity with Will, when Will Smith's team like had reached out, I remember sitting down and thinking like, okay, this is a new relationship. This is a new client. I can take whatever energy I want into this relationship. So like I sat down and I was like, I should decide what kind of energy I want to take into this relationship, because this is like a life-changing opportunity for me. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to go into this relationship with just like so much optimism and like hope and inspiration. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I'm going to be like the kid in the candy store, because I think people like to be around people like that. They like to have that energy around. They like to have that curious energy. That's what brings life to projects. And that's what makes like working on a set or traveling with somebody exciting. It's like those people who don't treat it like it's just some job, but they're like, this is fucking awesome that we get to do this,
Right. That's powerful. And it's powerful for you to like slow yourself down and make that decision, because I think so often, like, you've done so much client work for so many people, some of which I'm sure has turned out to be amazing and mutually beneficial and lifelong friendships and partnerships and all of that. And then some of it is like, sounds exciting and then turns out to just be a total bummer. I lost your video, but
yeah, no, wait, I'm coming back. My dad was calling me. There, I'm back.
Oh yeah. No worries. Yeah. So I think that it's interesting. It's really mature and like smart of you to make that decision. And
speak? I want to speak to that a little bit more, because that is something that I wanted to flesh out a bit. Is
fleshlight out a bit
at the time. Fleshlight. I want to fleshlight this out. So at that particular time when I got hit up by Will Smith's team to do work with him, I for some reason was in like a weird mental space. Like I had hit like a little bit of a rough patch where I was feeling a little bit jaded, like about just like working in entertainment. For some reason, I was just in an off spot. So I do think it's important every now and then to do like a personality check on yourself and just make sure that your energy is where it needs to be. And if it's not where it needs to be, then like I would almost recommend not doing client work and like figuring it out for yourself, because energy is so important, especially with clients at like an A-list level or whatever you want to call it. You really want to be bringing like good vibes and great energy. And so it was so important for me to make that conscious choice. Like more than anything, I was like, all right, this is the priority, is like going into this relationship. I have to be, I want to be like, where it came from was I remembered like when I first met you, I felt like I was a really optimistic, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. And just over the years of working, I got jaded, thought I knew it all. Like I just caught myself one day thinking like, damn, I'm not the kind of person right now that like I would actually even want to like hang out with or work with. So it was important for me to like sort of reset. And then now I've been doing that more often, you know, like I think about that every few weeks. I'm like, all right, am I the kind of person that I would actually want to work on a project with? And sometimes, some days I'm not. I'm like, damn, today, like whatever it is, I'm just not in the right headspace. So I think it's important constantly to like check yourself.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've heard Rob Dyrdek say something similar. He said something like, he said that every day for 2 years, as soon as upon waking up, he would give himself a score on 1 to 10 about like how he felt energetically. And I think a lot of that has to do with your emotional state. You know, I think sometimes like, you know, you can just be downright tired, but then there's also the things when if you've had enough sleep and you're just like kind of like not feeling super energetic in the morning, it's a lot of it probably has to do with like your emotional state. And
100%,
so I think that,
man.
Yeah.
Mental state. It's your mental state. It really is your mental state. It's how much rest you're getting. It's are you nurturing the relationships in your life? Are you like spiritually connected to yourself and spiritually connected to your clients and your friends and your family? Do you have gratitude? Do you practice gratitude? You know, do you thank whatever God you look up to or the universe for the gifts that you have? Do you like actively practice gratitude for your life? It's these like daily practices that I didn't take seriously for a long period of my life. But you know, you wake up one day and if you don't practice those rituals, you wake up one day and you just feel like a shell of a person. And I think that's sort of where I ended up. Like I had reached a spot where I just felt like I was just going through the motions of doing client work, but I wasn't spiritually, I wasn't like fulfilled, and my energy was just like awful. And then I was like given some opportunities, and I was like, all right, like reinvent yourself. This is an opportunity, you know, and I think in life we have so many opportunities to reinvent ourselves. Like every time you take on a project and you've never worked with that client, you decide who walks in the door that first day that you work on that project, you know? And I always tell people too, like, and I think about this a lot, like, you don't have to be working for Will Smith or The Rock to make incredible content. You could be making a video for like a dude who owns like a taco truck. But if you bring that energy and that respect and you come to it with like a sense of I'm gonna bring the best version of myself to this project, you might make something that gets so much attention.
Absolutely. And you will just enjoy the experience and the client will enjoy the experience. Like, are you
Absolutely.
the type of person that you would hire, you know? And I think it's interesting because in client work, understanding that from my side of things too, it's like, you know, it's like you're essentially there to serve someone else, you know? And it's, you know, there can be creative differences. There can be all of these things that ultimately the client is the one that's paying for it. So they ultimately have the creative control and the final call, you know? So
absolutely.
How do you navigate those type of situations? Like, especially with someone like The Rock or Will Smith, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's funny because like, you know, you guys could be reviewing like an edit, even if it's for something like social media or something. They could be like, yeah, I don't like and then you could like, do you just disagree with them? Like, or do you like, you know?
That's a good question. I think generally what I try to do is, I think in the beginning of like a client relationship, you don't really have a lot of what's the word? I'm trying to think of you don't have as much say because they've never worked with you before. So you do your best to show what you're capable of, but obviously generally they're the ones who are dictating the project. But I just think as you build a client relationship over time and you prove that you can deliver, what I always try to do with my videos or my projects is I look for little ways to like infuse a little bit of my own sensibility or my own personality, or like the things that I care about putting into a video, the emotions that I care about, like the feeling that I like to convey. I try to sneak that in, or I'll put it in, and that's what I'll try to make. I'll try to push for that to be something that is like part of the project. And then over time, I think your clients, they see like what makes you special. You know, for instance, with Will's team, he has these incredible producers. This guy named Lucas and another guy named Sadeo, and these guys are geniuses. They're the ones that hire everybody to make Will's content. And they're really good at like going into the world and finding people that are good at making certain things. And I think they like my work for the emotional, this sort of, I always sort of go for the heartstrings, like with my work. That's something that I just enjoy, making content that makes people feel really emotionally moved. And so they'll hit me up and they'll even say like, hey, we need like a lot of emotion in this piece, so we really want you to do it. So I think you start to sort of become known for having like a certain type of style or infusing a certain type of feeling into your videos or your projects. So I don't know, does that answer that?
Absolutely.
Cool.
That's cool, man. That's really cool. You and I have spoken about this before, but I kind of just wanted to put it on wax here. Let's talk a little bit about just like where like digital filmmaking and content creating is going. Like we're in this like rapid YouTube algorithmic Instagram, cycle. Like, someone like you who takes time and shoots high quality stuff. How do you compete with that? Do you compete with that? I mean, obviously it comes down to your goals and what you really want, right? You have like a strong client list. So it's like you're creating for others more. You're not doing a ton of your own stuff, but yeah, like how do you see that? Cause I mean, like for young filmmakers is the route like go on YouTube and try to keep up with the algorithm, or is what's the true route? And I think you were touching on it in what you were saying just a minute ago.
Man, that's a heavy question. And I think that my advice to any beginning filmmaker would just be to focus on making the best possible work and to be like world class at what you do. I wouldn't worry as much about like, is it like gonna feed the algorithm? I think you just like look at the best creators in the world, which you can start finding them because, you'll go on Instagram, you'll go on YouTube, and they're the ones that are getting the attention. They're the ones that are telling stories that millions of people are watching. And figure out what it is that they're creating that is like resonating with so many people. Like break it down, like take their work. So, man, sometimes I download people's videos and I watch it and I go frame by frame and I look for things like editing tricks. Wow. Yeah. I look at editing tricks, or I just constantly, I'm like studying what other people are doing. And I think the goal for me is, and when I do stuff like that, is I'm always just like, how do I hang with like the best of the best? How do I keep my sword sharp? And then I think it just really depends, like, what kind of storyteller do you want to be? In the digital age, you can try to be like a filmmaker that is making content for like Netflix, like movies, documentaries, that kind of stuff. You could be like a YouTube creator who's maybe making like anywhere from like 5-minute to 60-minute long videos. Or you could be like my buddy Caleb, who does these like 30 to 60 second, like VFX, almost like Zach King style, almost like it's like they look like magic. Like he'll do shit and it looks like magic, So he's like an internet magician. and that's his lane. So it's like, I think you just sort of dabble in different areas that you like, and then you figure out, okay, so you find the lane that you want to be in, and then you find all the best creators in that lane, and you figure out like, how do I get to their level? And then you break down their work, and you start creating. And I encourage people, go like, try to copy other people's ideas sometimes. Like, try to recreate something that your favorite creator made, because here's the thing, it's never going to come out exactly the way they did it. Like, whatever constraints you have, they're going to force you to improvise, and you're going to end up making something that's different. But you learn, I think, by trying to remix other people's ideas, you learn how to make content that is like actually good, if that makes sense.
That's dope. That really speaks to the whole theme of this student of the game idea. How you just, like you're saying, you download people's things and like go frame by frame. It's like,
dude,
really,
100%.
really deconstructing your favorite filmmakers. Who were some of the people you looked to early in your career, like when you were just getting started, or who like you had that moment with Pharrell on stage, but who like inspired you to become a content creator, a filmmaker?
Well, you and I talked about this just a few weeks ago, but we definitely got to show some love to our boy Levi and Maestro,
right?
Because I think he was like a pioneer. Like, there wouldn't be a David Dobrik if it wasn't for Levi and Maestro, in my opinion.
Wow, right? I agree.
Because I think Maestro like pioneered the whole thing of like, I'm gonna take a camera and I'm going to see the world with my camera, and I'm going to be this hustling rock star. And like, that's what he was, man. He was like, in my opinion, of that generation, like when we were watching Maestro's content, he was like a rock star to me. Like, I just couldn't believe the relationships and the videos and the consistency and the travel he was doing. And then he had like shoe collaborations. It was just like, it was like inconceivable at the time. So he was
so cool. Such so innovative, so cool, fucking man. Cool. I still think that it's like, I don't even like it exists now all across YouTube, because it's what's now known as like a YouTube vlog. Absolutely. It was a vlog. He like invented vlogging almost, but was also like a tastemaker. Yeah, Levi was actually my very first student of the game episode. So on the podcast app, he's the very first episode.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We talked in January of 2018. Yeah, and it's funny is because I asked him about that, because I was just like, so you invented YouTube. How do you feel that? How do you feel? You know what I mean? But
he probably had some humble ass answer.
Right. But what's funny, man, is like, yeah, no, I'll let you finish, but yeah, shout out Levi.
Yeah, man. And what I was gonna say though too, to his credit, is there was like a level of taste involved with everything he touched or did that I just don't see as much of that now with like the vlog generation.
Right.
Like, everything was very curated, all the music cues, and then even the clothes he wore, like the way he composed his videos and the shots. It just wasn't like throw some shit together. It felt beautiful. Like, it felt like something that belonged in like a streetwear boutique on Fairfax, like in the wall in a video, like almost like a fucking sneaker museum. I don't know.
Right.
It was completely dope. So he was one of the OGs for me.
He really curated.
Yeah.
And that's not happening. We're not getting that in this YouTube vlog era currently.
Not as much. No, not as much. So,
because it takes so much damn time. I think your content is like that too. And I think that's the thing that's frustrating, is like, for someone like him, I think even to a degree, he's probably like, yeah, I wish that I had 10 million YouTube followers and I could turn one of those videos out once a week, but them shits take me, however long, because I got to pick the perfect song and the cue has to hit perfect. And I got to, tell the right story. His stories always had these emotional components to them, and they always like revealed something, man, even about him and about the person he was with. And he was showing us cool people that we might not even know about. It was like very like hype beast adjacent culture that was like, Yeah, no, his stuff is so
Yes,
dope.
for anyone watching this or listening to this who isn't familiar, it would be cool to go dig up go watch like the one he did, I think on Mr. Cartoon was one that I'll never forget, where he was in the back of like Mr. Cartoon's like fucking lowrider, and they were like cruising the streets of LA, and Maestro had these like philosophical ideas about life, and just like, I don't know, man, it was so moving. So he was definitely one of the first. And then as far as like filmmakers go, I'm a huge fan of, like I mentioned, I love Stanley Kubrick. I've been studying a lot of his movies lately. He more than any filmmaker, I think, in history, like it's incredible the amount of attention to detail he put in to his movies, where every single thing in the frame is like serves a purpose. I love David Fincher is a director I love. He did Fight Club and the movie Seven. I tend to like things that are a bit darker in nature, and not just in the tone of the films, but even the way that they're colored. Like I like dark looking images for some reason. I gravitate towards those. There's a director named Michael Mann who did a film called Heat, which inspired me a lot. It was like a lot of Los Angeles at night. Like I love LA at night. I love shooting at night. That's just something that I find to be very powerful. So yeah, as far as like creators, those are some. I'm trying to think of who else comes to mind. Those are the immediate ones. Yeah, if any more come to mind, I'll let you know. But definitely Maestro was a huge one. And then in more recent years, probably it's like my friends inspire me more than anyone now. It's like people like you, my buddy, because now I'm getting to work with people who are like, I feel like it's kind of like, this is our moment, you know, like we're working with the top of the top, and my peers, like we're competitive with each other, like in a healthy way, where we share ideas and we send videos to each other. And it's like, fuck, like that looks, I have to go make something as dope as that now, you know?
Right. That's dope.
So that's cool. Dope. Yeah. So it's fun.
That competitive element is powerful. I think that's very similar in the music space. You know, it's like, while not leaning too much into it and being too obsessed with it, you know, like, and turning it into this, unhealthy competitive thing, insatiable.
Yeah. You have to go into it with the right mindset. Like when I say the word competitive, I don't mean it as in like I'm ever jealous of my friends. It's more like I try to use their, you know, it's like they say you're the sum of the 10 people, or is it the sum? I forget the saying. The sum. The gist of it is that you're like as good as the people you surround yourself with. Right. So lately I've been trying to like befriend content creators that I find almost like intimidatingly good, where I'm like, fuck, like, you know, and luckily some of them are cool enough to share their wisdom with me. Like I'll call my buddy Caleb, I keep talking about, he's been awesome, man. Maybe you can throw a link in the video or whatever.
Dude, he's been making these like cool videos for Kyle without unbeknownst to me. You know what's funny is I just saw it pop up. I started following him after you mentioned his name, and then I was like, dude, he's making videos of my client that are like epic. I'm like, I'd love an intro if you don't mind.
Absolutely. And he's the sweetest dude, and he has 2 kids and a wife, and he somehow manages to be like a kick-ass, he's like 24, 25, and he like somehow manages to be this badass father, but he's making like some of the dopest shit on Instagram and TikTok. Like he's blowing up on TikTok right now. I think he has like almost 1 million followers.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I met him doing stuff when we went to Budapest to do some stuff for Will.
So if you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around, you should just hang out with The Rock and Will Smith as much as possible. And I think that your other loser, it'll balance out your other like loser friends. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No. What have you learned from those guys specifically that you know, whether it's like directly like a conversation, like that Rock imparted this piece of wisdom on you, or just seeing how he moved? I know you talked about even, your workouts changing after seeing some of his?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started doing work with Will it's been about a year and a half, and it's almost been a year that I've been doing stuff with The Rock. And definitely took away some really valuable stuff from both of them. From Will, I think what I've taken away so far the most is just how important it is to be spiritually connected to your family and to the world, and to never lose that sense of being like a curious child. He's like that, which I love. And also the value of reinventing yourself. Like when you think your life needs to be tweaked a little bit, that it's okay to own that and to like proclaim that, like that you're working on yourself. Because I think when Will dropped like his YouTube content and his Instagram content, when he first came out, he was like, yo, like I'm this movie star, but I feel like I want to be a part of this new world. And there's things about me, like I have to shatter this idea of like Will Smith, the actor, so that I can just be like Will Smith, the human that collaborates with people all over the world. And that was a really powerful thing to see, man. I mean, think of how many people are so wrapped up in their own egos that they would never admit something like that, you know? And so I found that to be really powerful. And then with The Rock, I think obviously the workouts were huge for me. Just taking care of myself. Like I filmed one of his workouts, and he was working out for like 2.5, 3 hours, like full on savage beast mode. And I just remember thinking like, damn, I really need to step my game up. And that was a huge motivator for me. So after I made some content of him in the gym, I really like reapproached how I thought about my own personal fitness. And I make fitness now like the number one priority in my life, almost over relationships even. Because the thing is like, if you don't have peace of body and peace of mind, you can't really offer much to people around you.
Right.
So that for me, I put it above everything. It's like sleep and fitness. And then it's like, and then I think about work, truthfully.
Right.
And then, so that was a big one. And then also just someone like The Rock who could easily be the kind of guy who has like an ego if he wanted. He doesn't. Like he treats everybody on his team, so listens to everybody, respects everybody, remembers everybody's name. And that was and then like everything I make for him, he credits me on everything, which is amazing, So it's like any of you content creators out there that are working with somebody, some like B-rate rapper who's telling you he can't tag you in some shit, he can tag you. I promise. You can get tagged. So it's like, don't settle. You want to work with people. The rising tide should raise all ships. And you want to work with people who want to see you grow too. And so after working with DJ and him tagging me and everything and making me feel special and like hyping me up, it made me reflect on like some clients I'd worked with who like made excuses. And I was like, that's whack. Like there is no excuse. It's like, this is your art. Your name should be on it,
Right. And there might be something to that. There might be something to where The Rock's at versus the other unnamed people that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, for sure.
That's really
because
cool.
What it is that when your team feels like they're appreciated, they're gonna go like so much harder for you.
Oh,
you know, and then another big lesson I've taken away from someone like DJ is he's just so hungry and motivated, and it's like he treats his life like he's still, like he thinks about the times when he had nothing. And that's how I've tried to adopt that mentality of like, even though I have a little bit of money in my savings account or whatever, I treat every day like I'm broke. It's like, right. I'm still grinding with that same mentality. And that was something that I definitely have, some of that has rubbed off. I'm definitely not at his level, but it's great to be around somebody like that, because it definitely inspired that like work ethic in me for sure. So now it's crazy. Like working with him, Like I got my fitness on track. I started eating better. And I did all of that because all I wanted to do was be able to keep up with him. Like our schedules when we travel are so crazy that I was like, I have to be so healthy just so that I can keep up.
Right. That's crazy. That is another form of the rising tide lifting all boats. It's like, you know, he's going to elevate himself to such a level that like, in order to even play with me, you gotta eat good, sleep good, work out.
Right.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And I think that for some, you know, yeah, you really gotta fill yourself up with the fitness, with the sleep, with the nutrition. I think that that's so powerful. And I think it reflects in your work and it reflects in your relationships. And it's like how you do anything is how you do everything, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that all that stuff is really, really powerful. So anyways, obviously we're in quarantine right now. I kind of wanted to switch gears here and ask you a couple quarantine questions. Just like,
okay.
So from the quarantine, and this is just random, but I've just been curious about it. And you always have something. Have you noticed your productivity go up or down? And obviously you can't travel and do client work and stuff like that, but just overall, like I'm just curious because like we have this additional time, you know, you're someone who works from home a lot. Like, so what's your experience been?
My experience has been like for everyone, it's definitely been a mixed bag, but predominantly I would say that it's been very positive. Because when the quarantine started, again, one of those things where like I sat and I made a conscious choice. I was like, I thought to myself, this is like a time to level up. Like never again in our lives will there be a time when the entire world presses pause. And as a creator, as somebody who works with like a toolbox, now is the time, and the last few months have been the time to basically look in your toolbox and say like, where can I add? What can I improve on? Wow. And you don't need to be in the world to get better at stuff. Like you can make stuff at home. I mean, I could send you 100 videos right now that I've seen that are some of the most creative things I've seen in the last 5 years, and they've all been made in the last 2 months.
Wow.
So
you've noticed it specifically in the filmmaking space.
Yeah, because everyone's having to get creative, and I think sometimes you're your most creative when you're your most constrained. Wow. And so I used this time, I created like a list of things that I wanted to learn. The first was some editing tricks that I wanted to learn. Then I got into some animation stuff that I had been wanting to learn for a long time, but I just didn't have the time. And actually the next thing I just did a phone call yesterday with a guy who owns a company. This guy that I went to college with, he owns a company called Kitbash, and basically they create 3D assets for programs like Cinema 4D and Unreal, like the Unreal Engine. So the next thing I'm going to learn is how to do 3D stuff. Like I want to learn, like you saw that shit that like Drake posted where he's like dancing on the airplane and shit.
Right.
I want to start learning some of that shit. Like, why not? You know, it's like, what else am I going to do? Right. So I still have client work right now, and that's been giving me purpose. Like ever since quarantine started, I've had work. I've been doing edits for The Rock. I've done some work with Selena Gomez. I do some stuff with her team. What I love about what she does is she works in like the mental health space, which is something I'm really passionate about because it's something I've struggled with. So I've done some client work for her, some stuff for Will, some stuff for The Rock. So that's given me purpose. But then I've been working on personal projects. You've seen I posted some stuff on Instagram. And just leveling up my tool set, man. Like, I think that's so important. Who knows how much longer this shit's going to last, but to any creator out there, I would just say, learn new things, because when the world unpauses, they're calling it, like somebody I saw, they called it the great pause, which I thought was a really fascinating term. But when the world unpauses, will you have are you just like level 300 in Call of Duty, or did you learn some new shit, you know?
Right.
And that's on you.
Right. Yeah. What you said about some of your best creativity comes from constraints, I thought was really, really interesting, because we've experienced that with Kyle. Like, we had this full album done. We had all these treatments for music videos. We were going to shoot these big budget music videos, and he has these cool features, and we were going to shoot videos for those songs. But now it's like, we've had to just like really lock in on what it is that we're doing. We've had to shoot quarantine videos. And so it's like, when you're like, yo, everybody has to be 6 feet apart, we have to shoot it with people that we're quarantined with, and we only have a crew of 5 people. It's like, well, how do you do it then? You know, and it's caused us all to really step up and contribute to the process. So it's been, I can attest to that. And I've just noticed that even with this podcast, it's like, this is something I've been wanting to do for 2 years, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, because, you know, I couldn't decide on how big of a production to make it. Like, oh, should I rent Red cameras and fucking crazy audio equipment? And like, should we shoot it? Like, should I rent a, like, you know, when there's like no limits,
not doing it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how I feel about when you go to fucking Cheesecake Factory and they have 4,000 options, and you're just, it's this, you get decision fatigue. And I think that's the world that a lot of us pre-corona we're living in, is just like a constant state of decision fatigue. And what this has done is eliminated like 99% of your options.
Right.
So when you're just sitting there with like a few, when you go from Cheesecake Factory to In-N-Out Burger and there's 6 motherfuckers on the menu, you're like, all right, well, like I have to just pick what's here. You know, I have to make do with what you have in front of you. And like, that's why I think and also what's really valuable about it is now, once the world, if you practice now and you make stuff with limited tools, then when you have a lot of resources, you better understand how to utilize them, because you may do with so little.
Right.
I've seen that happen with like a lot of creators. You know, it's like they're so scrappy in the beginning and they're still able to get something that feels like high production, so that when the resources do come, they're so used to like spreading things, like having so little and making it work, that they're like, they really know how to make it work when they have an actual budget, or they have the actual tools they need, you know?
Right. And there's a level of it that you get jaded. It's like, you've experienced that, you know, it's like, you don't have to like you have enough client work where you don't have to like find somebody to shoot and like find a story to tell, like, because you're trying to get your career off the ground. Like, you have all this stuff coming inbound. And then sometimes like you just get caught in the monotony of like, you know, and then you know, maybe you're not happy with the rate that you're getting, and maybe you're not, it's like really easy, I think, to get jaded, especially as your career grows. But like, it seems like a theme from even the beginning of it was, you know, not only you kind of figuring out your energy, but then also the rock, like crediting, you know, the being the rising tide that lifts all boats. And then, you know, I feel you on that. And you said another interesting thing that I wanted to touch on, but just decision fatigue. I think decision fatigue is something that's just been so interesting to me lately, because there's certain things in my life that I really just want to put on autopilot, because it's like, I know for a fact that if I get my workout in, I know for a fact that if I get a good night's rest, like 8 hours of sleep, and it's not like too late or weird hours, I'm going to feel great. I know for a fact if I do a meditation, there's like these 5 or 6 things that if I do daily, I know I'm like undoubtedly going to have a great day. And, you know, but then there's like the deciding, when am I going to work out? When am I going to eat? Oh, I'm hungry. When am I going to intermittent fast? Like, there's all these things where like you realize that if you don't put some of them on autopilot, it then becomes a decision where it's like, is there any like routines or rituals that you have in your personal life that you've put on autopilot that's been really helpful for your experience and like not having to decide? Man,
that's, you know, for most people, that question would yield like an immediate yes. But for me, actually, I struggle a bit with having routine for some reason. Like my sleep schedule gets off. I still try to get the hours in, but for some reason my sleep schedule can kind of be all over the place. I've been trying to tweak things in my life to get it better. Like I just recently, as of like a few days ago, gave myself some rules with my phone. Like I'm trying to reestablish a healthier relationship with my phone and with social media. So like I don't keep my phone in my bedroom anymore, and I'm only
That's
allowing
a good one.
I'm only allowing myself to check it like a few times a day, because I noticed my mind. Like I noticed my mind was like spiraling out of control sometimes, and I just felt like I wasn't in control of like where my thoughts were going. So meditation is also something I've been doing lately for the first time in my life, which is it's so difficult when it's like the muscle of my brain is not used to sitting
to like turning it off, or
yeah,
like focusing on your breath,
or just knowing how to process your own thought cycle is like something I've never fully understood. And so I've suffered from a lot of anxiety and even like panic attacks I've had because my thought process spirals out of control. And then I feel like I felt at times like I'm just witnessing it happen. I have no control. Like I'm basically I'm observing this vessel that like my brain is just fucking going crazy. So I think part of my sleep patterns are part of it is linked to not having those meditative qualities, not having a good relationship with like my phone and with social media. So I've been tweaking. I've been quarantined. I've been making these adjustments, and it's been helping. Like my sleep has been better. The way I look at it though is like as long as I get it in the day, like as long as I get the workout in, as long as I get the meditation in, and as long as I follow like my rules with my phone, and as long as I sit down and I get, I don't put like a specific number, but usually like a minimum of like a few hours of work a day. Some days I'm really productive and inspired and I'll work, 8 to 10 hours. Some days I'll just sit for like 2 or 3 and that's all I can really do.
Right.
So yeah, man, those I think are the adjustments that I've made to try to, but I love what you said about putting things on autopilot. I think if you're that kind of person that's wired that way, where routine is going to make your life better, then by all means do it. I find it's really hard for me to just stick to a really rigid routine. That's part of the reason I love the job I have is like, hey, jump on an airplane. We're going to fly somewhere. There is no schedule, or there is a schedule, but it's totally different than what you were doing at home. That's exciting to me. I love that kind of stuff. And so sometimes routine for me just gets monotonous.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. It's different for everybody, but I would say figure out what the things are that make your day great and do those things every day, even if you don't want to. It's like working out, man. 80% of the time I don't want to work out. Like I'm like, fuck, man, I'd rather just chill or I'd rather do something. But halfway through my workout, without a doubt, 100% of the time, I know I reflect on it and I'm like, oh, this is the best decision I'm going to make all day.
Right. Sometimes when you just do that one thing, you just know that and I think it has just a compounding effect. You get up, you make your bed, you do these things. I think there is, I know, to me, I do experience this compounding effect in, small things, stacking to become a bigger thing,
And another thing too, is you have to remind yourself, or at least I know I remind myself, is that the best things in life sometimes don't always feel great when you start them. Like they feel difficult. They feel painful. They feel annoying. That's why not everyone does them because that's, they suck sometimes in the beginning. Like working out every day is not always like a walk in the park or sitting in front of your computer. Like one of the most intimidating feelings is sitting down at the beginning of a video edit when you have all this footage. It's like a kick in the nuts, dude. You're just so it feels like you're starting like a 200-mile marathon, and you're like, am I going to make it through this? And you always do, you know, but just realize, like, know that feeling is something you felt before, and remind yourself that, like, on the other end of it, you're always grateful that you did it, you know?
Right. Yeah. What you said about boundaries with like cell phone
Technology.
use and social media technology is something that it's like, I'm noticing it kind of be a theme, but then like, I'm noticing it kind of be a theme on social media, you know. It's like, I'm noticing it be kind of be a theme, but I think that everyone is like, has this like mild to bad social media addiction, you know, because
dude, and quarantine lit that shit on fire. Like,
right.
If you were like on the fence addicted before quarantine, like, you're a full-blown heroin addict right now.
Right.
And that's the thing, is like, that's what happened to me, was I recognized how much time I was spending on my social media. And the thing is like, it's like opening a fridge when you know you don't have food. Like, you keep opening it, and like, there isn't new food in the fridge. So it's like, every time you open Instagram, it's like the same shit. Like, unless you're going there with like a purpose, I feel, unless you're going to your social media with like a goal or a purpose, you're basically just like opening the fridge constantly. And
right.
I think what that does to your thought process is it just makes you like a manic thinker.
Completely. I've noticed which is with myself, I'm like exponentially happier when I'm not on social media. Like, and I'd actually be curious to hear your thoughts on this. Being a content creator, like, how much do you feel like it's the consumption versus creating, like creation? Cause it's like, it's so easy to consume all day. You know what I mean? And I think that was even part of it for me, even with this podcast. I was like, I listened to like multiple podcasts a week. I need to be recording a minimum of one a week, because I need to be like creating and putting it into the ethos rather than just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think we live through this, like, we're living in like the self-help porn, like, time, where there's so much information out there on how to make yourself a better person, but like, so few people applying practice. And I think that it's just really important to just practice, like, whatever, you know, like, allocate time in your life to ingest ideas, and then allocate time to practice the ideas that you're ingesting. And I know it's hard with quarantine, because you're like not out in the world, but you can still practice them on a micro scale at home. Like, for me with my phone, like, I just knew something had to change. So creating rules, sticking to those rules, and holding yourself accountable, like, you know, that's important. And I think, as far as being like a consumer versus a creator, for me, it's important for, like, I find it important to consume a certain amount, because that's how I learn like what people are creating. That's how I keep my sword sharp.
Yeah, your ear to the streets.
But I also, I don't know, man, like, I'm not the kind of guy who enjoys sitting on my phone all day watching stuff. Like, I get bored, you know? Like, I enjoy creating. Like, I enjoy making stuff. I'll start to get this feeling of like, why am I giving this person all of my attention and like making their shit like bigger when I could be working on my shit, you know? And that'll almost instantly turn me off to like wanting to, I'll just be like, ew, get this shit away from me, you know? So that happens to me often, but yeah, man, I think for me, I'm kind of at a point with social media and content consumption where I go to it with a purpose. Like, I don't like go to my social media anymore aimlessly. Like, either I'm looking for something in particular, or I'm posting and I want to interact with my audience, or one of my friends posted something, so I want to go show some support. But I don't default to it now. Like, I default to other things instead, I think. Or if I do default to it, it's only like once a day now. I'll give myself like, it's like eating sweets. Like, you'll allow yourself like a bite, you know, but you don't need to eat like the whole cake. So I'll find at night, maybe I'll give myself 15 or 20 minutes to like sit with social media. But generally, you know, the thing is it's like over time, if you can temper that addiction, over time you lose the addiction to it. It's like I stopped drinking a year ago, and now it's like for a few months I craved it, but now I don't. Like I don't even, the idea of it now is like, I don't want to say repulsive. It's not repulsive, but it's like, seems like a waste of time. And that's, I think as if you can adjust your relationship with social media over time, you'll realize like a lot of it is a big waste of time.
Right. Yeah, man. I've been experimenting with that, with social media, like a lot recently, to try to figure out like what the true north is. Cause like how much of it is like, it's like part growing my brand, and then it's part doing this, and you know what I mean? And socializing and communicating and, you know, building community. And then it's like, but then there's also like a lot of time wasted that you're not going to get back. And I agree. I think it makes what you said earlier about I think it makes you a manic thinker. Like I just noticed that I'm way more ADD when I'm like interacting with social media regularly. And then when I get away from it, I'm like way more clear in thought.
Right.
And yeah, it's a tough
you know
one.
So a piece of advice I would give to anybody who is trying to define their relationship with social media is find the sweet spot where your consumption and your interaction with it enriches your life and creates positive change for you, and figure out where that tipping point is, where it's like beyond the point of making your life better. Like for instance, for me, being on social media is like how I got to work with people like The Rock and Will. So there is a positive upside to it. It's how I built a lot of the relationships I have. But then it's like there's a certain point where I know I'm interacting with it beyond the point where it's like helpful. So I think everybody has to define what that is for them. And I think it's not something you do overnight. It's something you practice daily, but you start to like, you add a little bit, you subtract a little bit, and you start to find that sweet spot where you're like still building, but you're not, it's constructive. It's not like tearing your life down in a negative way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. One last question. This is kind of just, when you started talking about that, my mind immediately shot to this, but how did you get those gigs with The Rock and Will? Did you reach outbound to like somebody you knew was working on their team? Like, how did those come about? Or was it strictly, yeah, go ahead.
So I was working for a girl named Shay Mitchell doing her content. And so when they started, and with her content, I got to make some cool stuff. Like we traveled around the world. I got to make like travel videos, and I got to really, I think, show that I could make high quality like YouTube content. And when those guys that I mentioned, Sadeo and Lucas, the producers for all of Will's content, when they got hired to create, there was like Will made a conscious choice. He's like, I'm going to join social media. And if I'm going to do it, I want to do it the right way. Like I'm going to build a team. We're going to make the dopest shit. So he hired these producers that are like world-class producers. And they created like a list of who's making like, in their, whatever the criteria for their list, it was like, who's making cool shit on the internet. And fortunately, I was part of that list. Like they saw the stuff I was making with this girl, Shay. She's an actress. And like a social media influencer, and they added me to the list. And one day I got like I want to say it was like an email first and then a phone call, and they're like, hey, we're going to start making content for Will. Are you interested? And I was like, of course. Like Will Smith is like a childhood icon of mine. And then it didn't work out for like months for some reason. So I kept traveling with Shay. I was doing more stuff with Shay. And then eventually they hit me back and they're like, we're ready to start doing some stuff. And then my work with Will, and with Shay is what caught the attention of the Rocks team. And I had a meeting with them, like they asked if I was interested in making some stuff. And then we didn't collaborate for like, I want to say almost 6 to 8 months, maybe 6 months. I'll have to go back and look at my calendar. But again, it was one of those things where I heard and then I didn't hear back for a long time. So I didn't even know.
How do you deal with stuff like that? Because that can be hurtful.
Dude, no, it can, but no, honestly, I'm good at like setting my expectations, because I got burned a couple times, like early on, where I expected more out of something than I thought. I worked at this company, this television company, and I created this, this was back in like 2014. I created this idea for a television show, and MTV bought the show. Like they straight up were like, we want the show. And it was an idea I came up with. So I was like in my mid 20s working at a TV company. I was in these like meetings with executives of a massive television company. And they were asking me my ideas, and like, they're like, yeah, like we sold your show to MTV. Like, you're going to be a creator of this thing. And like, I went and got like, I like popped bottles with my friends and shit. Like, damn, like we just sold the show. And then like a week later, the president of MTV left the company and they got a new guy in, and he canceled like all the shit that they had bought. So like that, it got taken away from me. And I just remember feeling so gutted. And I just told myself that I was never going to let myself ever again, expect something before it comes. And so now, like every meeting, any opportunity, like I'm grateful for the moment, but I don't start thinking in my mind, like, here's how I'm going to move the chess pieces. I'm just present, and I just roll with it. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, and like these opportunities with like Will and The Rock, I'm so grateful to have them. And if one day for some reason they're not there anymore, then I'm not going to bum about it. Like I'm going to keep moving on with my life and just try to be positive and try to find the next great opportunity. But I think it's just setting expectations and not like planning for a life that I don't have yet. It's just living in the moment. It's so important. And the thing is guys like Will and DJ, I'll tell you, man, I think they can sense that kind of stuff. Like when you're around people like that, they can sense when you have like ulterior motives behind why you do things, as opposed to just being there and just being present and just wanting to create amazing stuff. So I think it's part of making that choice is you want to put that energy into the relationship, because people are smart, man. People are intuitive. They can smell when you're like in it for a reason, which right. I try not to be, truthfully.
Right. I love that, man. That's great. That's awesome, dude. I think that's a good place to call it quits.
How long? This is my first podcast. How long did we go?
We went an hour and 15.
Nice, man.
Yeah. Thank you, dude. Thanks for your time. Yeah. Thanks for your wisdom. Super, super powerful stuff. So much stuff to deconstruct.
Before we jump off. So what's on your agenda for the next, for the rest of for the next couple months and for the rest of the year? What are your plans?
Man, I'm trying to grow this. I'm trying to grow this brand, spend a little free time doing this. And then honestly, just working with my clients, working with Kyle, getting Kyle's music out, working with my other client, Isaac Jacuzzi, getting his music out. But, just trying to do the normal balancing act. I don't have, it's tough to kind of make plans. I was hoping on like getting a little travel in this summer, but it's looking like that may or may not happen, or maybe I have to like redefine what type of travel I'm trying to do. But yeah, I'm cruising, bro. How about you?
Well, the loneliness hit me a bit this week. Like the novelty of the quarantine is wearing off. Like, it's like, it was kind of like, I don't want to say fun, but it was like, oh yeah, I get to be home and like work on shit. And I don't have to, like, I was a little relieved to not be traveling as much, because I was starting to burn out a little bit with some of the travel. but I'm like full blown feeling like I miss humans for sure.
Have you been pretty strict with your quarantine?
Yeah, 100%. I haven't seen anybody, man, except for my roommates.
Shit. Yeah, I'm hanging out. So, I mean, I'm like selectively hanging out. I'm not hanging out with people with comorbidities or people that are in the at-risk group for like that could potentially get sick and die from coronavirus. And I'm also instructing people that I hang out with to not, because, you know, but it's not that I'm just like down to just like do whatever. I'm not like, I'm not going full mask off or anything, but like friends like you, like I feel like we could probably get a hang in.
Yeah. So I'm having to, that's where I'm at right now, is figuring out how to like reintegrate humans into my life. And like I said, I'm working on learning some 3D stuff. I'm working on some edits for The Rock that like are creative and different, just using like our archival footage. And other than that, man, just smashing my little home gym every day and hit my Peloton bike.
I thought you said I thought you were smashing your fleshlight.
Bro, I'm double fisting fleshlights over here.
Yo, that's awesome. So how you got to send me pics of your home gym. I've got my little home gym cracking too, but
mine's pretty fresh, man. Like I got all the shit. I like hung up picture. I got like a picture of The Rock hung up. I got one of Muhammad Ali. I got like a weight. Like I got full weights. I got a Peloton bike. I'm in like better shape right now than I've been in a long time, because I'm like, we have so much time to work out, you know?
I love it. I know I need to start going ham. I need to start going crazier. That's the one thing that's been bothering me, is I've just been like not prioritizing my workouts and then just letting the days slip away. I went for like about an hour and 15-minute bike ride today down to the beach, which was nice.
Nice.
I'm getting my movement in. I'm doing some breathing stuff and getting some sunlight and you know.
They're saying vitamin D is a huge thing with Corona.
Right. Yeah.
They're saying it's like at least, I mean, they don't know for sure. I think everything is still up in the air, but at least from what I've been hearing is that it's really important to be getting it, either supplementing it or getting sun every day, which I definitely haven't. I've sat out in the sun like 4 days.
Oh, really? Wait, like your gym, where's your gym? It's in your house or in your garage or something?
It's like a guest house. So it's part of the house I live in, has like a guest house that has this spare room on top. I'll send you a picture. Sick. But yeah, the vitamin, I need to start sitting in the sun a bit more, because I'm not getting any vitamin D from my computer screen. That's for sure.
Right. Blue light. You're getting blue light,
baby. Bro. So, all right, man. Well, thank you for having me, man. This was my first podcast.
Thank you, bro. I'm happy. I'm happy that I could pop your pod cherry.
Bro, you whipped out the fleshlights and we went to work.
All right, my brother. Peace. Let's hang soon.
Okay, man. Later, bro.
Later.